All right, good morning everybody. I'm just going to do a quick setup and then Brad's going to take over. Far too long ago, probably 2012, we got the idea to think differently about how we present our State of the Lake reports, and we came up with the concept of a reporting dashboard. So I'm just going to set it up for you. Typically, we do a 5-year State of the Lake on a rotation around the Great Lakes. It's traditionally been a book. I took a quick scan. Brad's going to talk a bit more about sort of the schedule and the time delay in his talk, but it's 200 pages sometimes. It can take a long time to get these reports out. It's not uncommon to have them 4 and 5 years after the sort of reporting window, and they become it's complicated because of the jurisdictions involved. Lake Erie, there's 5 management jurisdictions and lots of cooks in the kitchen and lots of approval processes. So we thought we could probably go from that sort of analog 5-year State of Lake report to something more contemporary. So I've got a couple of screen captures here that Brad's going to go through a case study for Lake Michigan. To give you an example, the principle is it's sort of peel the onion. You can start at a high layer, get a top level assessment of what's going on, using sort of general metrics. And then depending on your interest, you can drill down and you can get to the actual data. And then you can even go further and actually get to the scientific literature behind it. So it's sort of how much water do you want to take from the fire hose, and how fast do you want to drink. So it's kind of user driven. That's sort of the principle of it. We looked for inspiration out there, and here's just a screen capture of, I think it's New Hampshire. No, this is Puget Sound. It's vital signs reporting. I just grabbed the Chinook salmon indicator. A very similar approach. They've been doing this for decades, and so it's not new, and we're sort of looking around and getting our inspiration and seeing what others have been doing. New Hampshire's got a really dynamic site, and you can hover over this data and get individual metrics and stuff. So other agencies have gone down this road. And then the Council Lake Committee's decided we're gonna take a run at it. It's been a while to get to this point, but we're getting sort of first generation. And I just want to do a shout out. Is Jeff McCauley in the room? No, Jeff's not here. So for the record, Jeff's been great. He's been the person in the back sort of making this happen and herding the cats, as it were, to get this along. So I'm going to stop there and I'm going to turn it over to Brad to walk you through the Lake Michigan case study. There you go.
Thanks, Todd. Special thanks to Todd as he came before the Council Lake Committees with this idea, many years ago, and we're starting to see the fruits of that labor as we work through these dashboards for the various State of the Lake reports. So as Andy said, I'm going to kind of briefly walk you through the Lake Michigan experience, what we talked about, maybe the importance of doing the dashboard if you aren't already convinced, and show you the utility of it. To start, I went back to look at the joint strategic plan and what does it say about our obligation to not only ourselves and scientists, peers, administrators, and public. And I ran across these two things in the strategies: a consensus approach as well as accountability. And I think both of those are very important as we build these dashboards. And we did it with the books itself, our publications that we had done, but really this consensus approach not only among the groups that are on the technical committees as well as partners, as well as those of us on lake committees, a consensus approach to tell the story of what's going on in each lake and really build the science and then how we're reporting on our fish community objectives. And then accountability, something that Andy talked about in terms of accountability to not only ourselves, but administrators, public, and peers. And you can see in the plan, it talks about these different reports that are to be published. And one of those is the State of the Lake report. As Andy mentioned, is mostly through booklets. And you probably on this next slide want to avert your eyes to the data. I pull it out, and it's not all that pretty. As he said, sometimes we're talking in good years, 2 or 3 years. In some cases, you'll see 5, 8. It really took us a long time to go from what Lake Huron did the last couple of days to a finished public report, really documented, and when you get right down to it, what happened 5 years ago and how useful was that? Not very. We had one example here, a shameless plug for Lake Michigan, where we actually overcame the barriers. And why did that happen? is because we had really strong leadership as our editor. Is Bo Bonnell out here somewhere? Is Bo still here? There he is, Bo and Steve Robillard. Herded the cats, as Andy said, and got us to a point where it got us out in about a year and a half from our State of the Lake. So, but as you can see, for the most part, we weren't doing a very good job. For our Lake Michigan, we went down the road as many of the lakes has done in terms of looking at our fish committee objectives, and that's exactly how we were going to report out in our longer publications, and that's obviously the route we took for our dashboard. Well, as we went through it and we were looking at how we're going to do this, sometimes, it's a big project. You've got a lot of different moving parts. We got to start small. We have to start somewhere. And so we said, well, let's tackle something that maybe we can easily accomplish. And we focused on this, believe it or not. Looking back at some of the information from Lake Erie, at that point it was a draft. And these are the way we were going to show that we're meeting our fish committee objectives. And you can see that they are not that good. In fact, Tom Gorenflow, which I think many of you know, came to the committee and said, this isn't very good. We can do better than this, can't we? This isn't very informative. These infographics aren't that good. What can we do? So we said, yeah, sure, Tom. We can do something better than that. What do you have in mind? He goes, I don't know, some kind of dial, something green, something yellow, something better than that. And we said, sure, Tom. You've been on these committees since I think they started in the 60s. So yeah, we can do it. So after we kissed his ring, sure, we'll do it. And we'll come up with this graphic. Now, I may have embellished the story a little bit, except for kissing his ring, of course. But we settled on this, which actually we stole from the lower trophic level report as a little dashboard symbol. I don't know if Tom is there. He can see the recording. But yeah, it's actually back used now in Lake Erie, and it's an integral part of the dashboard. So thanks, Tom, for getting us started on the right foot. So I knew once we had this figured out, the rest was simple. So if you look at our State of the Lake and other State of the Lakes, you can see that they're very concise. We have a little bit of an intro piece looking at 16 through 21, and then we roll with our fish committee objectives with this infographic. Are we good? Are we fair? Are we poor? And then some very brief descriptors for each one of the FCOs, and really forcing not only the technical committee, but the lake committees to really get concise. What messages do we want to put out there? What kind of consensus do we have amongst all the different groups to put the text out there that would inform not only ourselves, but administrators and the public about what does this FCO really mean and what do we want to focus on. So we did that for all of our FCOs, gave it a dial, and you can very briefly read on this front page what are the status of these FCOs. And if that's as far as you wanted to go, great. Obviously, you could dig further deep in, as Andy said, and really get into the weeds on these different indicators. The second part that we then embarked on is working with the tech committees, the partners on those tech committees, the working groups, to develop indicators that would tell the story of each FCO. And there are a lot of indicators that were thought of, and this is a great collaboration amongst the groups. I think one of the best parts of developing this dashboard was these groups working together to look at these indicators and determining which ones were we going to show, which ones were pertinent to the FCO at hand, and how is that going to integrate the science with the information that we're presenting. So it was a good exercise by the groups to come up with these indicators and then eventually force them and us to put out the best ones that we could. And so if you look at the second page of most of these State of the Lake reports, you end up with a more succinct part telling the story of the exact FCO. In this case, our harvest goal for salmon and trout. And then another very brief descriptor, and I think this really is key as we move through this whole dashboard. Yeah, you can put text out there, but you can't put a lot. So what do you want to put out there that really means something? And then lastly, you can see these different indicators that we put out for this objective, as well as is it meeting it and what kind of trend did we have. So this is key again to show the stakeholders, administrators, and the public, where are we with the state of the lake and with each FCO. And if you want to go a little bit further on page 3, you can do that and actually look at each individual indicator, read some more about it, get some more information about whether it's the reporting interval, what lake are you on, are you talking about meeting it, what kind of trend do you have, and what kind of confidence do we all have in the information. And then lastly, if you really want to get in the weeds, as Andy said, drink from the fire hose, look at Chinook salmon age 3, learn a little bit more about that indicator, and then obviously finishing that up with a graphic on that exact indicator. And you can see here in the last 5 years, we were meeting this indicator of large Chinook salmon female at age 3. So when you boil it all down in terms of these State of the Lake dashboards, I think there's a couple key points to take home. One is that we're really going back to the strategic plan, both in consensus and accountability, and really doing a good job as we put these dashboards out there. Certainly, as I showed, our timeline hasn't been great. We had hoped to get our Lake Michigan dashboard out in under 2 years, which I think we basically did. But I think moving forward, now that we have the indicators picked, we think our second generation will go much quicker. Obviously, it's a brief summary compared, as Annie said, the 200-page books that we're putting out. So I think this brief summary on these FCOs gets the message across that we want to get across, and allows this integration of our entire technical committee, as well as other partners, working on these objectives and getting this dashboard built. And certainly looking at and getting out to the public what's our existing science on the fish populations of each individual lake, and really being accountable to a simple interface that allows users to see the information, presents it in a very digestible format, and gets this out in a timely fashion on reports out on our State of the Lake. With that, I'll turn it back over.